Cole stood in the dusty training yard of Fort Horizon, watching the massive ship descend from the orange sky. He had been a soldier for 12 years. He had fought in 3 wars. He had seen things that would break most men, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The Galactic Council had announced the partner program 6 months ago. Humans and aliens would be paired together to fight against the Void Swarm, an enemy that threatened all living things in the galaxy. Had volunteered because he had nothing left to lose. His wife had died in the first swarm attack. His son had been taken. Fighting was all he knew now. The ship landed with a soft hum. The doors opened and beings of many shapes and colors walked out. Some had scales. Some had feathers. Some looked like nothing had ever seen before. They were all soldiers like him, warriors from distant worlds who had also lost everything. A tall alien with pale blue skin and 4 arms approached the human soldiers. She wore the uniform of the council, and her voice was calm when she spoke. "You will now meet your partners. The bond between you will be permanent. It cannot be broken. Choose wisely, for your lives will depend on each other." Felt his heart beat faster. He looked at the line of alien warriors waiting across the yard. Some were huge. Some were small. All of them looked as nervous as the humans. A young soldier next to whispered, "How do we choose?" "You don't," an older sergeant replied. "They say the bond chooses for you." Watched as humans and aliens began to walk toward each other. It was strange. There was no system, no order. People simply moved, drawn by something invisible. One by one, pairs formed. Hands touched. Eyes met. And with each connection could see something change in their faces. Then he felt it. A pull in his chest. A warmth that spread through his body. His feet began to move without his permission. He walked past dozens of aliens, not looking at any of them. His eyes were fixed on a figure standing alone at the edge of the group. She was shorter than most of the others. Her skin was deep purple like the night sky. She had 2 arms, 2 legs, and a face that was almost human, except for her silver eyes and the thin scales that covered her cheeks. She wore simple armor and carried no weapons. She looked lost. When stopped in front of her, she looked up at him. Her silver eyes met his brown ones, and in that moment felt something he had not felt since his wife died. Connection. "I am Elle," she said. Her voice was soft but clear. "I am from the world called Ran." "Cole," he replied. "Earth." She tilted her head. "You are sad." It was not a question. She could feel it. Through the bond that was already forming between them, she could sense his pain. "Yes," admitted, "I lost my family." Elle's eyes softened. "I lost mine too. The swarm took my entire colony, 3,000 souls gone in one night." They stood in silence for a moment. Around them, other pairs were talking, laughing, crying. But Elle simply looked at each other. They did not need words. The bond was already speaking for them. The council officer approached them with a device in her hands. "You have chosen each other. The bond will now be sealed." She pressed the device to his chest, then to Elle's. There was a flash of light, a wave of warmth, and then felt something open inside his mind. It was like a door had appeared where there had been only a wall. Through that door he could feel Elle. Her thoughts were like whispers. Her emotions were like colors. He could sense her fear, her hope, her determination, and he knew she could sense the same in him. "This is strange," Elle said, touching her chest. "Very strange," agreed. The officer smiled. "You will grow used to it. Many pairs find that the bond makes them stronger. You will fight as one. You will think as one. You will become something greater than you ever were alone." Looked at his new partner. She was small. She carried no weapons. She looked like she had never been in a real battle, but through the bond he could feel something else. A fire. A strength that did not come from muscles or guns. A will to survive that matched his own. "Have you fought before?" he asked. "No," Elle admitted. "On my world I was a healer. I helped the sick and the wounded. But when the swarm came, there was no one left to heal, so I came here to fight instead. A healer had been paired with a healer. Part of him wanted to laugh, part of him wanted to cry. What kind of joke was this? He was a killer, she was a healer. How were they supposed to work together? But the bond would not let him doubt. Through the connection, he felt Elle's certainty. She believed this was right. She believed they were meant to be partners, and slowly began to believe it too. "I will teach you to fight," he said. "And I will teach you to heal," she replied. Shook his head. "I don't think I can learn that." Elle smiled for the first time. It was a small smile, but it lit up her whole face. "You can. The bond will help. On my world, we believe that warriors and healers are two sides of the same coin. One cannot exist without the other." They were assigned quarters together. A small room with 2 beds, a table, and a window that looked out over the training yard. Set his bag on one bed. Elle set her bag on the other. Then they sat in silence, trying to understand what had happened to them. Through the bond could feel Elle's thoughts. She was scared. She was far from home. She was surrounded by strange beings from strange worlds. But she was also hopeful. She believed that together they could make a difference. "Tell me about Earth," she said. Was surprised by the question. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. I want to understand you. The bond shows me your feelings but not your memories. I want to know who you were before we met." So talked. He told her about Earth, about the blue oceans and green forests, about the cities filled with millions of people, about the wars humans had fought among themselves before the aliens came, about his wife, Sarah, who had loved to garden, about his son, Jake, who had wanted to be a pilot. Elle listened to every word, and through the bond felt her compassion. She did not pity him, she understood him. She had lost everything too. When he finished, Elle spoke about Ran, about the purple forests and the silver lakes, about her people who valued knowledge and peace above all things, about her mother who had taught her to heal, about her brothers who had died protecting their home. By the time they finished talking, the sun had set. The sky outside was dark and filled with stars. Looked at those stars and thought about all the worlds out there, all the people fighting the same enemy, all the partners discovering each other for the first time. "Do you think we can win?" Elle asked. Wanted to say yes, but he could not lie to her. Through the bond, she would feel the truth. "I don't know," he admitted. "The swarm is powerful. They have destroyed hundreds of worlds, but I do know one thing." "What?" "I will fight until my last breath, and I will protect you with everything I have." Elle reached out and took his hand. Her skin was cool and smooth. Her grip was gentle but firm. "And I will heal you when you are hurt. I will keep you alive so you can keep fighting. Together, we will be stronger than either of us alone." Looked at their joined hands. Human and alien, warrior and healer, 2 broken souls who had found each other across the stars. He did not know what the future held. He did not know if they would survive the war, but for the first time in years felt something other than grief and anger. He felt hope. Training began the next morning. Woke before dawn as he always did. But this time he was not alone. Through the bond he felt awake at the same moment. She turned to look at him from her bed, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. "You are awake," she said. "So are you." She smiled. "The bond, I felt you stir." Had read about the bond, but experiencing it was different. It was like having a second heartbeat in his chest. He could feel Elle's presence even when she was not in the room. He could sense her emotions like echoes of his own. It was strange and wonderful and terrifying all at once. They dressed and went to the training yard. Other pairs were already there. Some had been bonded for months and moved together like dancers. Others were new like in Elle, still learning to understand their connection. The training master was a huge alien with rock-like skin and no visible eyes. His name was, and his voice sounded like grinding stones. "Listen well," said. "The bond is a gift, but it is also a responsibility. Your partner's life is in your hands. Their pain is your pain. Their death is your death. You must learn to use the bond or it will destroy you. Felt a flash of fear from Elle. He sent back a wave of calm through their connection. She looked at him gratefully. The training was hard. They ran until their legs burned. They climbed until their arms shook. They fought practice battles against drones and simulations. Through it all, felt Elle struggling beside him. She was not weak. Her body was strong in its own way, but she had never been trained for war. She did not know how to hold a weapon. She did not know how to dodge an attack. She did not know the thousand small skills that kept a soldier alive. But she was determined. Through the bond, felt her refusal to give up. No matter how many times she fell, she got back up. No matter how tired she was, she kept going. And slowly, she began to learn. Taught her everything he knew: how to shoot, how to fight hand to hand, how to move through a battlefield without being seen. In return, Elle taught him about healing, about the energy that flowed through all living things, about how to use the bond to share strength and ease pain. Your people have a gift, she told him one evening as they sat exhausted in their quarters. Humans are strong, not just in body but in spirit. You refuse to accept defeat. Even when everything is lost, you keep fighting. Shrugged, we're stubborn. No, Elle said seriously. It is more than that. I have met warriors from many worlds. They are skilled, they are brave, but humans are different. You have something they do not. What's that? Elle thought for a moment. Hope. Even in the darkest times, humans hope, and hope is the most powerful weapon against the swarm. Did not know what to say. He had never thought of hope as a weapon, but as he considered her words, he realized she might be right. The swarm was not just an army. It was a force of despair. It consumed worlds and left nothing behind. Fighting it required more than guns and ships. It required the belief that victory was possible. Weeks passed, and Elle grew closer. The bond between them deepened until they could almost read each other's thoughts. In combat drills, they moved together without speaking, would attack while Elle watched his back. When he was hurt, she would heal him in seconds. When she was in danger, he would be there before she called. Other soldiers began to notice. The pair that should not work, the warrior and the healer, was becoming one of the best teams in the program. How do you do it? Another human soldier asked one day. His name was, and he had been partnered with a large, armored alien who communicated through colors. My partner and I still struggle to understand each other. Thought about the question. I don't know, we just connect. I think it's because we don't try to be the same. I'm the fighter, she's the healer. We don't compete, we complete each other. Nodded slowly. Maybe that's our problem, we both want to lead. You have to trust each other, said. The bond only works if you let it. That night felt Elle's sadness through their connection. He found her standing by the window, looking up at the stars. What's wrong? He asked. I was thinking about home, she said, about everyone I lost. Stood beside her. He did not speak. He did not need to. Through the bond, he shared her grief. He let her know that she was not alone. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For being my partner, for not giving up on me when I was weak. Shook his head. You were never weak. You were just learning a new kind of strength. Elle turned to look at him. Her silver eyes were wet with tears. You are a good human, Cole. And you are a good Elle. She laughed softly. Ran is our word for healer. Then you are good too. They stood together in silence, watching the stars. Somewhere out there the swarm was moving, destroying, consuming, but in this moment felt peace. He had a partner, he had a purpose, he had a reason to keep fighting. Tomorrow they would learn that their first real mission was coming. Tomorrow everything would change. But for now they simply stood together, two souls bound across the void of space. The bond between them glowed warm and strong. It was a light in the darkness, a hope in the despair, and it was only beginning to show its true power. The mission briefing was held in a large room deep underground, and El sat with 50 other pairs, all of them tense and alert. On the screen at the front of the room, images of destroyed worlds flickered past. "The swarm has attacked Colony 7, the commander announced. She was a human woman named Director Hayes, with gray hair and hard eyes. 20,000 civilians are trapped in the underground shelters. The swarm surrounds the colony. Our mission is to break through, rescue the survivors, and evacuate them before the swarm reaches the shelters." Studied the images. The colony was on a small moon with no atmosphere. The buildings were domes connected by tunnels. The swarm creatures covered the surface like a black tide. Through the bond, he felt Elle's fear, but beneath the fear, he felt her determination. She was ready. "This will be dangerous," Director Hayes continued. "Many of you may not return, but those civilians are counting on us. We are their only hope." Looked at Elle, she looked back at him. "Are you ready?" he asked through the bond. "Yes," she replied. "Are you?" "I was born ready." She smiled. That is such a human thing to say. They loaded onto transport ships an hour later. The journey to Colony 7 took 2 days. During that time, and Elle trained together, meditated together, and grew their bond even stronger. Noticed something during their practice sessions. When their connection was at its strongest, he could do things he should not be able to do. He was faster, stronger. His reactions were sharper. It was as if Elle's life force was flowing into him, enhancing his abilities. "What is this?" he asked her. Elle looked thoughtful. "On my world, healers could share their energy with warriors in battle. It made them stronger, faster, harder to kill. I thought it was just a legend, but the bond makes it real." "Can you do it in combat?" "I don't know. I have never tried." "Then we will try together." The transport ship dropped out of hyperspace above Colony 7. Through the viewport, could see the moon below. It was gray and lifeless, except for the dome complex that held the colony, and covering the surface around the domes was darkness. The swarm had fought them before, but only small groups. What he saw below was different. There were thousands of them, maybe millions. They moved like liquid shadow, flowing over the ground in waves. "How are we supposed to get through that?" someone asked. No one answered. The landing was rough. The transport ships came down fast, using missiles and cannon fire to clear landing zones. Grabbed his rifle and jumped out before the ship had fully touched the ground. Elle was right behind him. The swarm was everywhere. They were creatures of darkness, with too many legs and too many teeth. They screamed as they attacked, a sound that made ears ring. He fired his rifle in short bursts, each shot taking down a creature. Beside him, Elle stayed close, her hands glowing with healing energy. When a soldier fell nearby, she ran to them and healed their wounds in seconds. "Stay with me," shouted. "Always," she replied. They pushed forward with the other teams, fighting through the black tide. The swarm was relentless. For every creature they killed, 2 more appeared. But the bonded pairs were strong. They moved together, fought together, protected each other. Felt Elle's presence through the bond like a fire at his back. He knew exactly where she was without looking. He knew when she was in danger before she called out. And when a swarm creature broke through his defense and slashed his arm, she was there in an instant, healing the wound before he could even feel the pain. "Now," she said, "let me try." She placed her hand on his back and felt something surge through him. Energy, power, life itself. His tired muscles filled with strength. His clouded mind became crystal clear. He moved faster than he had ever moved, his rifle firing with perfect accuracy. "It's working," he shouted. They reached the dome entrance. The door was sealed, but engineers were already working to open it. The swarm pressed in from all sides. More soldiers fell. More healers worked desperately to save them. Stood at the front line, fighting with everything he had. Elle kept her hand on his back, feeding him energy. He knew she was draining herself. He could feel her growing weaker through the bond, but she refused to stop. "Elle, you have to rest." "No, you need me." The door opened. Soldiers rushed inside, grabbed Elle and pulled her through just as a wave of swarm creatures crashed against the closing door. Inside they found the survivors. 20,000 people crowded into underground shelters, children crying, adults praying, all of them waiting to die. Looked at them and felt something harden in his chest. These people would not die. He would not let them. "We need to get them to the ships," he said. The evacuation was chaos. Soldiers formed a corridor from the shelters to the landing zone. Survivors ran through while fighters held back the swarm, and Elle stayed at the most dangerous point, where the swarm attacks were heaviest. Hours passed. Thousands were evacuated, but the swarm was adapting. Learning, their attacks grew more focused, more deadly. "We can't hold much longer," someone shouted. Looked at Elle. She was pale and exhausted, barely able to stand, but her eyes still burned with determination. "One more push," he said through the bond. "One more push," she agreed. He took her hand. She closed her eyes, and together they did something neither of them fully understood. The bond between them exploded with light. Energy poured out of them in waves, washing over the battlefield. The swarm creatures screamed and fell back. The other soldiers felt strength flood into their bodies. Wounded fighters stood up and rejoined the battle. For one perfect moment, and Elle were not two beings. They were one heart, one mind, one soul burning bright against the darkness. The last survivors reached the ships. The soldiers fell back. The transports lifted off, leaving the swarm screaming on the surface below. Collapsed as the energy left him. Elle fell beside him. Other soldiers rushed to help them, but they were already healing each other through the bond, their life forces intertwining. "What was that?" Elle whispered. "I don't know," replied, "but we saved them all." She smiled weakly. "We did." They slept for 2 days after returning to Fort Horizon. When they woke, they found that word of their deed had spread. The pair who had released the light, the human and the healer who had turned the tide. Commander Hayes visited them personally. "What you did out there," she said, "has never been recorded before. The bond between you. It's different, stronger. We need to understand it." Looked at Elle, she looked at him. "We don't fully understand it ourselves," he admitted. "We just trusted each other." Hayes nodded slowly. "Then keep trusting, because you may have just discovered the weapon that can win this war." The months that followed changed everything, and Elle became symbols of what bonded pairs could achieve. Scientists studied their connection. Trainers brought them to teach other pairs. Across the galaxy, the story of the light they had released spread like wildfire. But with fame came danger. The swarm was intelligent, it learned, it adapted, and it had noticed an Elle. They were on a routine patrol when the attack came. Their ship was passing through an empty sector when alarms started screaming. "Swarm contacts," the pilot shouted. Hundreds of them, they came out of nowhere. Grabbed his rifle and ran to the window. Outside, he saw the black shapes of swarm ships surrounding them. These were not the mindless creatures they had fought before. These were the elite, the ones that thought, the ones that planned. "They're targeting us specifically," Elle said through the bond. "They want to destroy us." "Then we don't let them." The battle was brutal. The patrol ship was small, with only 20 soldiers on board. They fought desperately as swarm creatures breached the hull and poured inside. And Elle fought back to back. The bond between them sang with shared purpose. When tired, Elle gave him strength. When she faltered, he protected her. Together, they cut through the attackers like a blade through shadow. But there were too many. "We need to use the light again," Elle said. "It almost killed us last time. If we don't, we die anyway." Knew she was right. He took her hand. They closed their eyes. They reached deep into the bond looking for that power they had touched before. But something was different. The swarm had learned. One of the creatures launched itself at Elle, its claws aimed at her heart, threw himself in front of her. The claws tore through his chest. Pain exploded through the bond. Elle screamed. She caught as he fell, her hands already glowing with healing light. "No, no, 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 no," she cried. Felt his life slipping away. The wound was too deep. Even Elle's healing could not fix it in time. Through the bond he felt her desperation, her love, her refusal to let him die. And then something happened. Elle did not just heal him, she gave him part of herself. Her life force poured into him through the bond, filling the wounds, rebuilding what was broken. It was the most intimate thing two beings could share, a piece of her soul living inside him forever. Gasped and opened his eyes. The wound was gone, but more than that he felt different. The bond between them had changed, deepened. They were not just connected anymore, they were merged. He stood up. The swarm creatures around them hesitated. They sensed something had changed. And Elle moved as one, not coordinated like before, not synchronized, truly one. 4 arms moving in perfect harmony, 2 minds thinking the same thought, 2 hearts beating with the same rhythm. The light came again, but this time it was different. It was not an explosion. It was a constant glow surrounding them like armor. The swarm creatures that touched it burned. The ones that fled died before they reached the door. In minutes the ship was clear. The other soldiers stared at them in shock and awe. "What are you?" someone whispered. And Elle looked at each other. They could not speak with separate voices anymore. When they talked together. "We are bonded," they said, "truly bonded, as no pair has ever been." They returned to Fort Horizon as heroes, but they also returned as something else, something new. The scientists did not understand it. The commanders did not know what to do with it. Some people were afraid of them. But Director Hayes saw the truth. "You are the key," she said. "The swarm is darkness, you are light, you can lead us to victory." "How?" they asked. "By teaching others, by spreading this bond, by showing every pair in the galaxy what they can become." So they did. And Elle traveled from world to world, meeting bonded pairs and teaching them. They could not give others the same deep connection they had. That had required sacrifice and near death. But they could show the way. They could demonstrate what trust and love and partnership truly meant. And slowly, other pairs began to grow stronger. The light spread. The swarm began to lose ground for the first time in decades. 1 year after their connection transformed, and Elle stood on the bridge of the flagship Horizon's Hope. Around them, a fleet of 10,000 ships gathered. Bonded pairs from every world in the galaxy stood ready for the final battle. The swarm had been pushed back to their home system, one last stronghold, one final fight. "Are you ready?" Commander Hayes asked. And Elle answered together, "We have been ready our whole lives." The fleet jumped to hyperspace. The battle for the galaxy had begun. The swarm home system was a nightmare made real. A massive black hole sat at its center, surrounded by rings of dark matter that pulsed with alien energy. The swarm had built their civilization here, in the spaces between stars, where light could not reach. And Elle stood at the viewport, watching the darkness unfold around them. Through their shared bond, they felt the fear and courage of every bonded pair in the fleet. 10,000 ships, 20,000 souls joined together by the same connection that had transformed them. "It's beautiful in a terrible way," Elle thought. "It won't be beautiful when we're done with it," replied. The battle began with fire. The fleet's weapons lit up the darkness, creating explosions that briefly the dim stars. Swarm ships rose from the rings of dark matter, thousands upon thousands, a tide of shadow rising to meet the light. And Elle moved to their assault craft. They would lead the strike team that would attack the swarm's central hive, a massive structure at the heart of the system. Intelligence suggested it was where the swarm queen lived, the mind that controlled all others. Kill the queen, kill the swarm, Director Hayes had said. But nothing about this war had ever been simple. Their assault craft launched with 50 others, carrying the best bonded pairs in the fleet. They flew through the chaos of battle, dodging debris and enemy fire. Through the viewport, watched as ships on both sides were destroyed, lives ending in flashes of light. Focus, El reminded him. We cannot save everyone, but we can save the galaxy. I know, it just never gets easier. That's what makes you human. What does that make you? She smiled through their shared consciousness. Lucky. The central hive loomed ahead. It was enormous, larger than any space station had ever seen. It pulsed with dark energy, and looking at it made his eyes hurt. This was where the swarm was born, where they planned their conquests, where they dreamed of a galaxy consumed by darkness. The assault craft landed on the hive's surface. Swarm defenders immediately attacked, and El were the first out, their light blazing against the shadows. Behind them came the other pairs, each one glowing with their own connection. They fought through corridors of twisted metal and organic material. The swarm had built their home from the remains of the worlds they had consumed. Recognized fragments of buildings, vehicles, even statues from civilizations that no longer existed. They keep trophies, he thought with disgust. They will become trophies themselves, El replied. The resistance grew stronger as they approached the center of the hive. The swarm queen knew they were coming. She was sending her best defenders to stop them. Pairs began to fall. Not many, but each loss was felt through the web of bonds that connected them all. And El used their light to shield those around them, to heal those who were hurt, to push back the darkness. Finally, they reached the throne room. The queen was waiting. She was unlike any swarm creature had seen. She was huge, filling most of the massive chamber. Her body was a mass of shadows and teeth and eyes that looked in every direction at once. But what struck most was her intelligence. He could see it in those eyes. She was not a mindless monster. She was aware. She was thinking. She was afraid. You come to destroy me, the queen said. Her voice echoed in their minds, bypassing their ears entirely. But you do not understand what you fight. We fight for survival, and El replied together. For our homes, for our families, for the future. You fight for an illusion. Light is temporary, darkness is eternal. Every star will eventually die. Every galaxy will fade. In the end, there is only the void. Then we will burn bright until that end. We will not go quietly into your darkness. The queen laughed, a terrible sound that made the walls shake. I have consumed 10,000 worlds. I have ended civilizations older than your species. What makes you think you can stop me? And El looked at each other. They did not speak, but through their bond they shared everything. Every memory, every hope, every dream. All the love and loss and determination that had brought them to this moment. Then they looked back at the queen. Because we are not alone. They reached out through their bond, not just to each other but to every pair in the fleet, every connection they had helped strengthen, every soul they had touched in their journey across the galaxy. The response was immediate. From every ship in the battle, from every pair fighting in the corridors of the hive, energy flowed toward them. It was like every star in the galaxy had focused their light into a single point, and El became that point. The light that erupted from them was blinding. It filled the throne room. It poured through the corridors. It burst from the hive and spread across the battlefield. Everywhere it touched, swarm creatures fell. Their darkness could not stand against the combined hope and love of a galaxy united. The queen screamed. Her massive body began to dissolve in the light. She tried to fight back, to summon her darkness, but she was alone. Her children were dying around her. Her power was fading. This is not possible, she cried. No single being has this power. You're right, Enel replied. No single being does, but we are not single, we are many. We are all the bonds that connect us, all the love that strengthens us, all the hope that drives us. You could never understand that. That is why you lost." The Queen's final scream echoed through the void as she dissolved completely. With her death, the swarm across the system collapsed. The creatures that had been controlled by her mind suddenly lost their purpose. They fell and did not rise. The battle was over. The war was won. And Elle collapsed in each other's arms. The light faded, leaving them exhausted but alive. Around them, the other pairs cheered. On every ship in the fleet, soldiers and civilians celebrated. The news spread across the galaxy at faster-than-light speed. The swarm was defeated. The darkness had been pushed back. The light had won. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy began to rebuild. Worlds that had lived in fear for centuries started to hope again. Trade routes reopened. Diplomatic missions brought former enemies together. The bonded pairs became symbols of a new era, one built on connection rather than division. And Elle returned to Fort Horizon as the greatest heroes the galaxy had ever known. But they did not seek glory. They had something more important: each other. On a quiet evening, they stood on a balcony overlooking the training yard where they had first met. Young pairs were going through the same bonding ceremony they had experienced years ago. New connections were being formed. New lights were beginning to shine. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if we hadn't found each other?" asked. "Sometimes," Elle admitted. "I think I would have died in the first battle, or given up and gone home to wait for the end. And I would have just kept fighting until something killed me. No purpose, no hope, just anger. Then it's a good thing the bond chose us." Smiled, "The bond didn't choose us. We chose each other." Elle leaned against him. Through their connection, they shared a moment of perfect peace. They had lost so much to get here: family, friends, parts of themselves, but they had also gained something precious. A partner, a purpose, a future. "What do we do now?" Elle asked. "We teach. We help other pairs find what we found. We make sure that no darkness ever threatens the galaxy again." "That sounds like a lot of work." "It does, but we'll do it together." "Together," Elle agreed, "always together." The stars shone bright above them. Somewhere out there, new threats might be waiting, new challenges, new battles to fight, but Elle were ready. They were bonded, they were one, and nothing in the universe could break what they had built. Their connection had transformed everything: the war, the galaxy, themselves. And as they watched the young pairs below taking their first steps on the same journey, they knew that transformation would continue. Light spreading through darkness, hope conquering despair, love binding souls across the void of space. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy. That was what made them special, not their strength or their technology or their numbers, their hearts, their stubborn, unbreakable, eternally hopeful hearts. And in the center of it all, a human warrior and his extraterrestrial partner stood hand in hand, living proof that even the greatest darkness could be defeated by two souls joined together in light. The end was just another beginning, and their story would be told for 1,000 generations.